Welcome to Ravenwoods. Today's episode, we're going to be discussing strange stories that happened in cemeteries. Our first story comes from a Redditor called Nick Boddick, and he worked at a crematorium and has this story to tell. I've had a number of odd experiences with our crematorium. One such instance was in 2012, following a service for a very large man, roughly 375 pounds. I got the retort, which means cremation chamber, preheated, while my wife set up a movie to watch while the man was cremated. I used the elevating platform and then slid him in, closing the door to the retort afterwards, and went to sit down. After about 5 minutes after I'd shut the door to the retort, we heard a thump. Neither of us paid much mind, but in a few moments later there was another, and then another. I stood up, worried that the man may have had a pacemaker still inside him, however, unlikely as he had had all his organs removed. The thumping and thudding got more hurried. We looked through the front window of the retort and couldn't believe what we were seeing. The man inside was flailing about. Both of his arms and legs were bouncing around like he was in extreme pain. Now, it isn't odd to see parts move while someone is being cremated, as the limbs are broken down, and they will often contract as the muscles and tendons snap. But this was most decidedly not that. The man's fingers were balled up in fists, and he was banging against the windows, and his legs seemed to be kicking downward as if to get out. The man's mouth was opened, and the first groans began emanating from within, then screams. There was no way, absolutely no way whatsoever, that he could have still been alive. But for about 20 seconds after we'd gone up to the retort, the man inside the cremation chamber screamed and flailed his arms and legs about. The next story comes to us from a former Redditor, and it is anonymous. It's called "A Weeping Angel Statue Haunted the Grounds." I wasn't intentionally seeking out cemetery employment. It happened accidentally, but I quickly became smitten. It was pleasantly quiet, and I was also able to connect with people, such as those visiting late loved ones and participating in ceremonies, without becoming overwhelmed. However, there is a particular statue of a weeping angel in the cemetery that locals, and even out-of-state visitors, are wary of due to the alleged paranormal activities surrounding it at nightfall. There are echoing cries, foggy apparitions, and the angel itself moves. Because of this, the cemetery has become one of the top ghost hunting cemeteries, much to my dismay. I will admit, I sometimes feel nauseous near the statue, and tend to only venture near the lot if daylight is out. But I work third shift now, so this is almost always unavoidable. I'm highly skeptical of the paranormal, so I write it off as paranoia from all the stories I've heard, but tending to anything near it is not among one of my favorite tasks to perform. I try to switch out with other groundskeepers, but no one wants to do it. I mean, I've seen one of my coworkers, who is a grown man in his 50s, intentionally hide from our superintendent to avoid it. I almost believed this story until he said it was third shift, and I don't know any cemetery, unless it's like a security guard watching it, sure, but no, they don't have groundskeepers on third shift, so yeah, I think this guy just made it up as he went along there. I'm going to tell you a creepy story that it's actually my own story. When I was about 22 years old, I was in college, and it was in the summer, and I took a job as a groundskeeper at a cemetery. So first I was just mowing the lots because it's a really big cemetery, one of the largest in Illinois. I was just mowing like different sections, and they would pay me per section. And then one of their groundskeepers quit, and so they asked me if I'd work, and I was like, sure. So I just kind of go along with the guy that had worked there like 40 years, that dug the graves and things like that. And I'd have to drive the dump truck, and he would drive the backhoe. So anyway, one day we were standing way back from the funeral that was going on. It was a Jewish funeral. We were standing back in a tree line and just standing there, being respectful, waiting for everybody to leave, so then we could go up fill the grave in, and which was fine. It felt a little weird there. You always kind of had a little bit of a creepy feeling. But anyway, so I went home, And the next day, I was riding my bike because I was all healthy back then. I rode my bike there, and I get there the next morning, and there's like 10 police cars, state police, everything else is there blocking the entrance to the cemetery. And I said, well, I work here. You got to let me in, kind of thing. And they did, and apparently they had found that we had had a serial killer in the area that had he killed several women, but then he had killed an old woman, and they'd never found her body. He killed her to steal her car, and they found her bones there, and it was right like probably 20 foot from where we were standing in that tree line. It was really creepy, but it was in Peoria, Illinois, and I could look it up. I think it would have been 1992 or 3. I can't remember. And her name was Bernice Faggot. I can remember her name. I can't remember the serial killer's name. It seems like it was something Anderson or something like that. There's a guy that he'd killed some people, and then he got out of prison, and then he came back out. He got out of prison again, and he was killing prostitutes. But then, like I said, this old woman just happened to be, wrong place, wrong time, and he killed her for her car. To steal her car, but he was caught and all that. But you can look it up if you want. I do remember that being her name, and like I said, it's Peoria, Illinois. And we've had our fair share of serial killers in Peoria, Illinois for some reason. I don't know what the attraction is to here. So, but anyway, after that day, I did quit. It's like I quit right then. It's like I don't think I want to do this. I was just doing it as a summer job anyway, so it didn't really matter. But anyway, that's all I have for this episode. I had some other stories that I had gotten from the internet, but when I was reading through them, they seemed kind of either a very weak story or they just seemed pretty unbelievable. There were some stories about like digging up all these caskets that were empty, or and caskets that are 100 years old that they're saying are still intact, that they'd just be disintegrated by then. So it's just a lot of unbelievable stories. So I just decided I'd add my own little interesting story, even though it's not scary. It's interesting that happened. In fact, I'm thinking I might go down, because this cemetery, it's Springdale Cemetery in Peoria, and it also has a really huge pet cemetery there and they have headstones and everything for the animals. So I might go down there and film the pet cemetery, because I don't think too many people have actually seen a large pet cemetery like they have down there. And that's all I have. So if you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe. And I hope you enjoyed my stories. Take care.